You are now listening to the 12 Powers of Mind, brought to you by Reimagine Audio, written by S.C. Introduction. The mind is not broken. It is untrained. Most people believe they need more information. They don't. They need coordination. The modern mind is overloaded, not underpowered. It consumes endlessly, books, videos, teachings, opinions, yet remains fragmented, reactive, and fatigued. Not because the mind lacks ability, but because its powers are scattered, competing, and unmanaged. This work begins with a simple but radical premise. The mind already possesses everything required for mastery. What it lacks is awareness of its own powers and how they work together. This is not a motivational book. This is not a spiritual book. This is not a religious book. This is a manual of inner mechanics, written in plain language, grounded in lived experience, and focused on one outcome only: self-mastery through awareness. Why this is not another book. Books inform. This work reorders. Most systems try to fix behavior first. Some try to change belief. Others aim at discipline, habits, or external structure. But behavior is downstream. Belief is incomplete. Discipline without alignment becomes strain. This work addresses the operating system beneath them all. The mind is not a single thing. It is a network of powers, each with a function, a strength, and a failure mode. When these powers operate unconsciously, life feels chaotic. When one power dominates, imbalance appears. When the powers are coordinated, something rare happens. Life begins to feel intentional. That state, intentional living, is what most people mean when they say they want clarity, peace, confidence, or purpose. They're not asking for perfection. They're asking for internal authority. This book exists to restore that authority. The 12 Powers of Mind. Across history, cultures have named aspects of the mind in different ways, sometimes symbolically, sometimes philosophically, sometimes spiritually. But strip away the language and what remains is consistent. Human experience is governed by a small set of repeatable inner functions. This work calls them powers not to mystify them, but to name them accurately. A power is simply something that produces an effect, whether consciously directed or unconsciously expressed. Imagination, attention, feeling, will, inner speech, memory, discernment. These are not abstract ideas. They are active forces shaping perception, decision-making, emotional response, and identity in real time. You are already using all 12. The question is not whether they are active. The question is, are they aligned? Are they trained? Or are they running on habit and history? Mastery begins when you stop trying to control life and start coordinating the powers that interpret life. Consciousness over belief. This book does not ask you to adopt new beliefs. Beliefs change slowly and often collapse under pressure. Instead, this work develops something more stable: conscious awareness of how your mind operates. When awareness increases, beliefs reorganize naturally, behavior shifts without force, emotional patterns soften, decisions become cleaner. You don't need to believe fire burns to avoid touching it again. Experience teaches faster than belief. Likewise, once you see how a mental power operates, you don't need to argue with it, you simply use it differently. This is why the tone of this book is instructional plus reflective, not academic or preachy. The goal is not to impress you, but to make you dangerously self-aware in the best way possible. Scripture as reference, not authority. Throughout this work, you'll notice quiet references to ancient texts, particularly biblical ones. Not quoted, not preached, not used as proof. They appear only as reference points because long before psychology named these principles, they were encoded symbolically in story, parable, and metaphor. Those texts are not treated here as religious doctrine, but as early maps of consciousness, often misunderstood because they were read literally instead of psychologically. You don't need to believe in them. You don't need to follow them. They are included only where they clarify function, not faith. This work stands on experience, not authority. What mastery actually means. Mastery does not mean control over people. It does not mean constant happiness. It does not mean never feeling doubt, fear, or emotion. Mastery means you recognize what power is active in you. You understand what it is producing. You know how to redirect it when necessary. A mastered mind is not rigid, it is responsive. It does not suppress emotion, it integrates it. It does not deny reality, it interprets it wisely. It does not chase certainty, it cultivates coherence. When the powers of mind operate together instead of at odds, something subtle but profound happens. You stop feeling at war with yourself. And from that state, life reorganizes. How this book is meant to be used. This is not a book to rush. Each chapter focuses on one power, not as an isolated trait but as part of a living system. You'll explore how the power works, how it's commonly misused, how it interacts with other powers, and how to bring it under conscious direction. You may recognize yourself immediately. You may feel resistance at times. You may see patterns you can no longer unsee. That's not a side effect. That's the work doing what it's designed to do. Read slowly. Reflect honestly. Apply gently but consistently. Mastery does not come from intensity. It comes from clarity repeated over time, the promise of this work. By the end of this journey, you will not be dependent on this book. That is intentional. The goal is not to give you answers, but to restore your relationship with your own mind, so you can generate answers where you are in real situations without confusion. When the 12 powers of mind are coordinated, imagination provides direction, attention supplies energy, feeling gives weight, will sustains movement, inner speech commands, memory releases the past, reason serves instead of rules, discernment filters wisely, love integrates, vision unifies, and the mind becomes what it was always meant to be, a creative instrument, not a battleground. Where we begin. Every system has a first principle. For the mind, that principle is imagination, because before you act, before you decide, before you persist, you see something internally and accept it as real. That is where creation begins. So, in the next chapter, we begin exactly there. Chapter 1. Imagination. The image comes first. And from that foundation, we build mastery, power by power, until the mind stands unified. Every experience begins as an image, not an event, not a circumstance, not an opportunity or obstacle, an inner image. Before anything becomes visible in your life, it is first accepted invisibly in the mind, not always deliberately, not always consciously, but always imaginatively. This is not philosophy. It is not metaphor. It is mechanics. Imagination is the mind's capacity to form reality internally before it is encountered externally. And whether you guide this power or ignore it, it never stops operating. You are always imagining. The only question is whether you are doing it on purpose. Imagination is not fantasy. It is orientation. Most people misunderstand imagination because they confuse it with daydreaming. Fantasy is escapism. Imagination is orientation. Fantasy disconnects you from life. Imagination determines how you meet life. When you imagine, you are not making something up. You are assigning meaning, direction, and expectation to experience before it arrives. That assignment quietly governs what you notice, how you feel, what you attempt, what you avoid, and what you persist in. This is why two people can live in the same city, earn similar income, face similar challenges, and yet inhabit entirely different worlds. Their outer conditions may match. Their inner images do not. And the inner image always wins. The image comes first, even when you think it doesn't. People often say, "I'll believe it when I see it." But look closer at your own experience. You don't wait for confidence to appear before you act. You imagine yourself failing or succeeding first, and your body responds accordingly. You don't wait for rejection to happen. You imagine being rejected, and tension shows up before the moment ever arrives. You don't wait for success to be secure. You imagine loss, and caution shapes your decisions. In every case, the image precedes the emotion. The emotion precedes the action. The action precedes the outcome. This sequence never reverses. The image always comes first. The two modes of imagination. There are only two ways imagination operates. 1. Automatic imagination. This is imagination driven by memory, conditioning, repetition, emotional residue. Automatic imagination sounds like, "This is how it always goes." People like me don't get that. Something will probably go wrong. It doesn't announce itself as imagination. It disguises itself as realism. But realism is often just old imagery replaying itself. 2. Directed imagination. Directed imagination is conscious authorship. It does not deny facts. It selects meaning. It says, "I see what is happening, and I choose how I hold it. I know where this is going, even if I'm not there yet. I decide the image I return to." Directed imagination does not require effort. It requires decision and repetition. Why imagination is the first power. Imagination must come first because every other mental power answers to it. Attention follows images. Feeling animates images. Will sustains images. Inner speech explains images. Memory reinforces images. If imagination is unmanaged, the rest of the mind works overtime trying to compensate. This is why people feel exhausted. Without doing much, they are constantly reacting to images they never chose. Mastery begins the moment you realize the mind does not respond to reality. It responds to the image it holds of reality. Change the image, and the entire system reorganizes. Psychological mechanics. How imagination shapes reality. This is not mystical. It is observable. 1. Perceptual filtering. Your mind cannot process everything, so it filters reality based on expectation. If you imagine opportunity, you notice openings. If you imagine threat, you notice danger. The world hasn't changed. Your filter has. 2. Emotional activation. Images generate emotion automatically. Your body reacts to imagined scenarios the same way it reacts to real ones. That's why stress can come from thoughts alone. Emotion then drives behavior. 3. Behavioral alignment. You act in alignment with who you imagine yourself to be. Someone who imagines themselves capable, speaks sooner, tries again, tolerates delay. Someone who imagines themselves limited, hesitates, withdraws, confirms the image. 4. Identity reinforcement. Repeated images form identity. Identity then demands consistency. This loop is how imagination quietly becomes destiny. Everyday human examples. The unsent email. A person delays sending an email. not because they lack skill, but because they imagine rejection, conflict, or embarrassment. The delay is not laziness. It's imagination at work. Change the image, and action becomes natural. The repeated relationship pattern. Someone keeps ending up with the same kind of partner, but internally they imagine love as effort, connection as unstable, closeness as risky. Their imagination selects familiarity over fulfillment. The money ceiling. A person earns more but feels no freer. Why? Their inner image of money hasn't changed, so new income gets processed through old assumptions. Imagination defines capacity long before circumstances do. Misuse versus mastery of imagination. Misuse. Constant worry. Catastrophic rehearsal. Replaying past scenes. Predicting loss and calling it preparation. This drains energy and creates fulfilling outcomes. Mastery. Choosing end states. Rehearsing calm competence. Returning to empowering scenes. Letting imagination lead behavior gently. Mastery is not intensity. It is consistency without strain. Inner dialogue. The voice behind the image. Every image carries narration. What you say internally assigns meaning to what you see. This is dangerous. This is possible. I always recover. This is temporary. Inner dialogue does not comment on reality. It defines reality. And once defined, the mind behaves accordingly. This is why imagination and assumption are inseparable. Imagination shows the picture. Assumption declares it true. Agreement is creation. Practical integration. Training the first power. This is where imagination becomes mastery. Step 1. Notice the default image. Ask, what do I assume about outcomes? What scene do I revisit when nothing is happening? Step 2. Choose a clean-end image. Not dramatic, not unrealistic, just resolved. A moment of relief, a feeling of stability, a sense of clarity. Step 3. Return gently. 2 minutes, several times a day. No forcing, no emotional squeezing. Just return. Step 4. Align one action. Do one thing that matches the image. Behavior seals imagination into reality. Quiet reference points. Without quotation, this principle echoes. The creative sequence described in Genesis. The renewal of mind discussed by Paul. The use of parable to reshape perception. The definition of faith as inner evidence. These were never religious commands. They were instructions for inner creation. Reflective closing. Your life is shaped by the place your mind returns to when it is unoccupied. That return point is your dominant image. Change that, and everything else follows. Imagination is not optional. It is always active. Mastery begins when you take authorship, because before anything appears in your life, the image comes first. Chapter 2. Attention. What you feed becomes you. If imagination is the architect, attention is the fuel. Nothing grows in the mind without it. You can imagine a new future once, but if you do not give it attention, it starves. You can recognize a destructive pattern, but if you keep feeding it attention, it strengthens. Attention is not neutral. Where your attention goes, your life follows. This chapter is about reclaiming the most stolen, misused, and underestimated power of the modern mind. Because attention is not just focus, it is permission. Attention is agreement in action. People often say, I can't help what I think about. That's partially true, but attention is not about stopping thoughts. It's about deciding which thoughts get fed. A thought without attention fades. A thought with attention becomes belief. A belief with attention becomes identity. Attention is how imagination becomes embodied. This is why attention must be mastered immediately after imagination. Without it, imagination stays theoretical. With it, imagination becomes lived reality. The hidden truth about attention. Attention feels passive, but it is active selection. At every moment you are choosing. What matters, what gets energy, what gets repeated, what becomes familiar. Most people never consciously choose. They react. And reaction hands control to the loudest stimulus, the strongest emotion, the most familiar pattern. That's not freedom. That's conditioning. The economy of attention. Attention is finite. You cannot give it everywhere. So life becomes an economy. What you invest in grows. What you neglect weakens. Modern life is designed to exploit this. Endless notifications, outrage cycles, anxiety loops, comparison traps, none of these steal your attention by force. They invite it, then condition you to return. And whatever you return to repeatedly begins to feel important, urgent, and personal, even when it isn't. Attention and identity. Here is a principle most people never hear. You become what you repeatedly attend to, not what you want. Not what you affirm once, not what you understand intellectually, what you attend to. If you attend to problems, you become a problem solver or a worrier. If you attend to lack, you become cautious or constricted. If you attend to possibility, you become adaptive and creative. Attention trains identity quietly. That's why mastery requires awareness, not effort. Automatic attention versus directed attention. Automatic attention. This is attention pulled by emotion, habit, fear, novelty. Automatic attention feels like, I didn't even mean to focus on that. I just keep thinking about it. It grabs my mind. Automatic attention is not failure. It's untrained power. Directed attention. Directed attention is conscious placement. It says, this does not deserve my energy. I return to what I'm building. I choose my focus deliberately. Directed attention does not suppress distraction, it outgrows it. Why attention amplifies everything. Attention magnifies experience. A small issue, when attended to constantly, becomes overwhelming. A simple opportunity, when attended to consistently, becomes life-changing. This is why attention is more powerful than circumstance. Two people face the same difficulty. One attends to the obstacle, the other attends to the solution. They don't just feel different, they live differently. Everyday human examples. The problem loop. A person says, I can't stop thinking about the problem. But thinking isn't the issue. Attention is. They revisit the problem repeatedly, expecting clarity, but attention without direction multiplies confusion. Shift attention toward process instead of problem, and clarity appears. The comparison trap. Attention placed on other people's outcomes creates dissatisfaction, even when your own life is improving. Why? Because attention defines reference points. Change what you compare against, and peace returns. The healing effect. People heal faster when attention moves from symptoms to capability. Not denial, redirection. The body responds to where attention rests. Attention and emotion. Emotion hijacks attention, but attention also feeds emotion. This creates loops. Fear feeds attention. Attention feeds fear. Mastery interrupts the loop, not by fighting emotion, but by withdrawing attention from its storyline. You don't suppress feeling. You stop narrating it. And without narration, emotion passes. Inner dialogue, the steering mechanism. Inner dialogue tells attention where to land. This matters. This is dangerous. This is important. Ignore that. Your self-talk is not commentary. It is navigation. Change the dialogue, and attention follows. Practical integration. Training. Attention. Step 1. Track where attention goes. For one day, notice what steals your focus, what drains you, what you keep returning to. No judgment, just awareness. Step 2. Choose one anchor. Select one internal anchor, a chosen image, a calming phrase, a steady intention. This is where you return. Step 3. Practice gentle return. Distraction will happen. Mastery is not avoidance, it is return speed. Each return strengthens attention. Step 4. Starve what weakens you. You don't fight distractions, you stop feeding them. What you ignore loses power. Quiet reference points. This principle echoes teachings on guarding the mind, warnings about divided focus, parables about seeds and soil, instructions on single-mindedness. All point to the same truth. Attention determines outcome. Reflective closing. Your life reflects not your intentions, but your focus. Attention is the bridge between imagination and reality. Guard it, direct it, respect it, because what you feed becomes you. Chapter 3. Assumption, the mind's hidden yes. Every mind is always saying yes to something, not out loud, not consciously, but constantly. Assumption is the quiet agreement beneath your thoughts, the unspoken conclusion the mind accepts as already true. It does not announce itself. It does not argue. It simply operates. And once an assumption is accepted, the mind reorganizes itself around it automatically. This is why assumption is more powerful than belief. Belief can waver. Assumption settles. Belief debates. Assumption proceeds. Assumption is the mind's hidden yes. What an assumption really is. An assumption is not an idea you think about. It is an idea you think from. It forms the background of your perception, the lens you forget you're looking through. Examples. People can't be trusted. Things work out for me. I always have to struggle. I figure things out. These statements are rarely examined. They don't feel like beliefs. They feel like facts. And facts don't get questioned. That's the danger and the power of assumption. Assumption versus belief. This distinction matters. Belief is conscious. Assumption is structural. You can say, I believe in confidence, while assuming you'll fail. You can say, I believe abundance is possible, while assuming scarcity is normal. Guess which one the mind obeys? Assumption, because assumption defines what feels natural. And the mind always moves toward what feels natural, even when it contradicts what you say you want. The sequence of creation, without mysticism. Here is the actual sequence at work. 1. Imagination presents a scene. 2. Attention feeds it. 3. Assumption accepts it as true. 4. Feeling energizes it. 5. Behavior aligns with it. 6. Reality reflects it. Assumption is the lock that turns imagination into identity. Without assumption, imagination stays. Hypothetical. With assumption, imagination becomes lived experience. Why assumptions are so hard to see. You don't feel assumptions, you live them. That's why people say, I don't know why I do this. I just react. It's automatic. It is automatic, because assumption operates below conscious thought. The mind does not ask, "Is this true?" It asks, "Is this assumed?" And once assumed, everything else lines up to support it. Everyday examples of assumption at work. The "that's just how I am" statement. When someone says this, they're not describing a personality. They're protecting an assumption. Change feels threatening not because it's hard, but because it violates the assumed identity. The repeating outcome. A person says, "This always happens to me." That sentence is not observation, it's assumption announcing itself, and the mind will work tirelessly to remain consistent with it. The calm person in chaos. Another person moves through difficulty without panic. Why? They assume resolution. They assume competence. They assume adaptability. Their nervous system behaves differently because their assumption is different. Assumption and the nervous system. This is critical. The body responds to what the mind assumes, not to what it hopes. If the mind assumes danger, the body prepares for threat. If the mind assumes safety, the body relaxes into clarity. You cannot talk your way out of anxiety while assuming loss. The body listens to assumptions, not affirmations. That's why mastery requires installing new assumptions, not arguing with old ones. Misuse versus mastery of assumption. Misuse. Assuming based on past pain. Treating emotional memory as prophecy. Confusing familiarity with truth. Letting circumstance define identity. This creates invisible ceilings. Mastery. Choosing assumptions deliberately. Installing them gently, not forcefully. Repeating them through lived evidence. Letting new experience confirm new agreement. Mastery is not pretending. It is deciding what you agree with. Inner dialogue. The installer of assumptions. Assumptions are installed through repetition of inner speech, not dramatic affirmations, casual conclusions. Figures. Of course. I knew it. That makes sense. Those phrases lock meaning into place. If you want to change assumptions, listen for the casual commentary, not the emotional outbursts. That's where the real agreements are made. Practical integration, rewriting assumptions. Step 1. Identify one core assumption. Ask, what do I expect without questioning? What feels obvious about my life? Step 2. Choose a replacement assumption, not extreme, not unbelievable, just slightly higher than default. Examples. I recover quickly. I figure things out. Support shows up. I don't stay stuck. Step 3. Install through experience. Act once in alignment with the new assumption. Let evidence, not force, do the convincing. Step 4. Reinforce calmly. Repeat the assumption internally, not as a chant, but as a conclusion. Calm repetition installs reality. Quiet reference points. This principle echoes teachings about faith as inner conviction, warnings about double-mindedness, instructions to assume the end, stories of transformation through acceptance. The message is consistent. Agreement precedes experience. Reflective closing. Your life reflects what you have already said yes to internally, not what you desire, not what you admire, what you assume. Assumption is the mind's quiet contract with reality. Read it carefully. Rewrite it deliberately, because whatever you agree with long enough becomes your normal. Chapter 4. Feeling. The body votes first. Long before the mind finishes a sentence, the body has already voted. Feeling is not an afterthought. It is not decoration. It is not weakness. Feeling is feedback, and, more importantly, authorization. You can imagine a future. You can direct attention. You can install an assumption. But if the body does not feel aligned with it, the system resists. That's because feeling is the bridge between thought and embodiment, and the body always casts the first vote. Feeling is not emotion, it is sensation plus meaning. Most people confuse feeling with emotion. They are related, but not identical. Emotion is labeled. Feeling is experienced. A feeling is a sensation in the body, paired with an interpretation. Tightness in the chest becomes fear. Warmth becomes relief. Lightness becomes confidence. The body supplies sensation. The mind supplies meaning. Together, they create feeling. And feeling tells the nervous system how real something is. Why feeling determines believability. The mind can entertain many ideas. The body accepts only what feels true. This is why affirmations fail when they feel false. Logic collapses under emotional pressure. Insight doesn't equal change. The body doesn't respond to concepts. It responds to states. Feeling is the state. When something feels real, the body organizes around it automatically. This is not psychology alone. It is physiology. The sequence revisited. Let's clarify the chain now that feeling enters the picture. 1. Imagination presents the image. 2. Attention feeds it. 3. Assumption accepts it. 4. Feeling confirms it. 5. The body aligns. 6. Behavior follows. 7. Reality reflects. Feeling is the confirmation receipt. Without it, nothing fully installs. Why people get stuck here. Many people can imagine a better life. They just can't feel safe inside it. So the body resists. Common reasons: old emotional memory, unresolved stress, identity tied to struggle, nervous system trained for vigilance. The body isn't sabotaging you. It's protecting what it knows. Mastery is teaching the body a new normal, gently, feeling as the body's language. The body doesn't speak words. It speaks sensation. And sensation answers one question: am I safe in this state? If the answer is no, the body tightens. If yes, it opens. This is why forcing positivity backfires. The body feels the mismatch. True change happens when the feeling is introduced without threat. Everyday examples. The opportunity that feels off. A person gets a chance but hesitates. Not because it's wrong, but because the body hasn't adjusted to the new identity yet. The feeling isn't warning. It's unfamiliarity. The self-sabotage moment. Someone moves close to success, then pulls back. Why? The body hasn't learned safety in that version of self, so it returns to the familiar feeling, even if it's painful. The calm achiever. Another person moves steadily forward, not because they're fearless, but because their body associates growth with safety. That association is trained. Misuse versus mastery of feeling. Misuse. Letting feelings dictate truth. Assuming discomfort means danger. Avoiding growth to maintain emotional familiarity. Suppressing sensation instead of listening to it. Mastery. Using feeling as feedback, not command. Allowing discomfort without retreat. Introducing new states gradually. Teaching the body through repetition. Mastery does not ignore feeling. It educates it. Inner dialogue. Naming the state. Inner dialogue assigns meaning to sensation. A racing heart can become, I'm in danger, or I'm energized. The sensation may be the same. The meaning changes the outcome. This is where feeling and word intersect. Change the label, and the body follows. Practical integration. Training the feeling state. Step 1. Locate the feeling. When imagining a desired outcome, notice where it lands in the body, what tightens, what resists. No judgment. Step 2. Reduce the scene. If the feeling feels unsafe, the image is too large. Shrink it. Go from total success to one calm moment of relief. The body accepts what feels manageable. Step 3. Breathe and stay. Stay with the sensation for 30 to 60 seconds. Do not escape. Do not force. Let the body acclimate. Step 4. Anchor the feeling. Attach a word or phrase. This is safe. I can hold this. This is allowed. Repeat gently. This is how feeling retrains the nervous system. Quiet reference points. This principle echoes teachings about peace surpassing thought, instructions to feel the end, stories where inner states preceded outer change, the idea that belief must be embodied. The message is clear. Feeling seals reality. Reflective closing. The body is not your enemy. It is your earliest ally, trained by repetition, not reason. If you want change to last, you must bring the body with you, not by force, not by denial, but by teaching it a new feeling of safety, because the body votes first, and mastery begins when it votes with you. Chapter 5. Will, the power to stay with it. Will is not force, it is continuity. Most people misunderstand willpower because they confuse it with intensity. They believe will is about pushing harder, clenching tighter, demanding more from themselves. That's not will. That's strain. Will is the quiet power that keeps you with something long enough for it to become real. And without it, imagination fades, attention scatters, assumptions weaken, and feelings drift back to familiarity. Will is what turns insight into duration, what will actually is. Will is the capacity to remain internally aligned without constant emotional reinforcement. It is not motivation. Motivation fluctuates. It is not discipline. Discipline can become rigid. Will is steadiness. It is the ability to say, I'm staying with this. I don't need proof yet. This does not require drama. I continue. Will is not loud. It does not announce itself. It simply endures. Why will comes after feeling. This order matters. If you try to apply will before imagination, attention, assumption, and feeling are aligned, will turns into self-conflict. You start forcing yourself against your own nervous system. That leads to burnout, inconsistency, self-judgment, quitting disguised as intuition. But when feeling has been gently introduced and the body is no longer resisting, will becomes natural. Will is not about fighting resistance. It's about outlasting it. Will versus force. Force says, I have to. I should. What's wrong with me? Will says, I remain. I return. I don't need urgency. Force tightens the system. Will stabilizes it. Force seeks results. Will sustains process. And process is where identity is rewritten, the real function of will. Will performs one essential function. It protects the chosen state from interruption, not from challenge, from abandonment. Most people don't fail because they can't start. They fail because they leave the state too early. They leave when doubt appears, emotion dips, evidence lags, distraction calls. Will doesn't eliminate these things. It simply refuses to treat them as exit signs. Everyday examples. The stop-start pattern. Someone begins a new practice, routine, or direction, then stops when enthusiasm fades. They believe motivation is required, but motivation is not fuel. Will is the emotional decision maker. Another person makes decisions based on how they feel that day. Good day, progress. Bad day, withdrawal. Will smooths this volatility. The quiet finisher. A third person doesn't rush or dramatize, they stay consistent. Not because it's easy, but because they don't negotiate with temporary states. That is will in action. Will and identity. Will is deeply tied to identity. People act consistently with who they believe they are. Someone who assumes, I'm inconsistent, will break will repeatedly. Someone who assumes, I finish what I stay with, will naturally persist. Will does not create identity. Identity permits will. That's why assumption and will are partners. Misuse versus mastery of will. Misuse. Using will to suppress emotion. Forcing behavior against inner resistance. Treating struggle as proof of progress. Making will a punishment. This turns will into self-opposition. Mastery. Using will to maintain alignment. Returning without self-criticism. Staying calm through fluctuation. Letting repetition, not effort, do the work. Mastery makes will sustainable. Inner dialogue, the language of continuity. Will is strengthened by simple inner language. I return. I stay. This doesn't require urgency. I'm still here. Not hype, not pressure, just continuation cues. The mind responds to what feels manageable. Practical integration, training will. Step 1. Choose one thing to stay with, not many. One practice. One image. One assumption. Will grows through simplicity. Step 2. Remove time pressure. Do not ask, when will this work? Ask, can I stay with this today? Will operates in the present. Step 3. Normalize fluctuation. Expect boredom, doubt, emotional dips. These are not failures, they are checkpoints. Step 4. Measure continuity, not results. Success is not outcome yet. Success is, I stayed. I returned. I didn't abandon myself. Results follow continuity. Quiet reference points. This principle echoes teachings about perseverance, warnings against wavering, metaphors of endurance, instructions to remain faithful to the unseen. All point to the same truth. What you stay with, you become. Reflective closing. Will is not the power to push. It is the power to remain aligned when nothing is exciting. It is the decision to continue without drama. And in a world addicted to stimulation, will is rare. But it is the power that carries all the others forward. Stay with it. Because mastery is not intensity. It is continuity. Chapter 6. Faith. Trusting the unseen outcome. Faith is not belief in something mystical. It is not optimism. It is not hope. Faith is a psychological commitment without visible confirmation. It is the ability to remain internally settled before evidence arrives. Most people think faith is about what you believe. In practice, it is about how long you can stay calm without proof. That capacity determines whether anything new is allowed to complete itself in your life. Faith is a state, not a thought. Faith does not live in ideas. It lives in nervous system stability. You know, faith is present when you stop checking constantly, you stop asking, is it working? You stop scanning for reassurance. You stop preparing for disappointment. Faith is not excitement. It is settled expectancy. And expectancy organizes behavior quietly. Why faith follows will. Faith cannot be rushed. If introduced too early, it feels like pretending. If introduced too late, it feels like resignation. Faith emerges after imagination has defined direction, attention has been placed, assumption has been accepted, feeling has been embodied, will has stabilized continuity. Faith is the moment the mind says, I no longer need to supervise this. That release is not passive. It is intelligent trust. Faith versus hope. This distinction matters. Hope says, maybe. I wish. I want this to happen. Faith says, this is underway. I proceed accordingly. I don't need to chase. Hope looks forward anxiously. Faith stands in the end calmly. Hope waits. Faith moves from certainty. The anxiety of proof-seeking. Most people sabotage progress by constantly checking for evidence. They imagine something new, then immediately look outside to see if it's working. This keeps the nervous system in evaluation mode. Evaluation creates tension. Tension collapses faith. Faith requires intervals of non-interference. This is not neglect. It is allowing cause to complete itself without interruption. Everyday examples. The relationship test. Someone begins trusting again, but keeps watching for signs of betrayal. Their vigilance communicates danger to the body. Faith would be acting as though trust is possible, without demanding guarantees. The career shift. A person commits to a new direction, but keeps a backup plan driven by fear. The mind remains divided. Faith would be moving forward without rehearsing collapse. The healing process. Someone begins healing, but constantly monitors symptoms. Attention returns to the old story. Faith would be letting the body reorganize without. Commentary. Faith and time. Faith changes your relationship with time. Without faith, time feels urgent, delays feel threatening, patience feels like loss. With faith, time becomes cooperative, delay becomes neutral, patience becomes strength. Faith is what allows process to breathe. Misuse versus mastery of faith. Misuse. Blind belief without alignment, spiritual bypassing, ignoring feedback, avoiding responsibility. This turns faith into denial. Mastery. Trust grounded in inner alignment. Calm expectancy. Non-reactivity. Continued action without anxiety. Mastery makes faith practical. Inner dialogue. The language of faith. Faith speaks quietly. Not declarations, not hype, just internal settlement. This is handled. I don't need to rush. I proceed normally. I stay present. The body responds immediately. Practical integration. Training faith. Step 1. Identify where you keep checking. Notice what you monitor constantly, where you seek reassurance. That's where faith is weak. Step 2. Reduce supervision. Intentionally stop checking for a period. Let the process work without commentary. Step 3. I act from the end. Make decisions as someone who trusts the outcome. Not reckless, aligned. Step 4. Normalize silence. No signs doesn't mean failure. Silence often means integration. Quiet reference points. This principle echoes definitions of faith as inner substance, teachings on unseen reality, warnings against double-mindedness, metaphors of seeds growing unseen. The message is consistent. Completion happens beneath visibility. Reflective closing. Faith is not believing harder. It is relaxing sooner. It is the confidence to let what you have begun finish itself. And when faith is present, effort decreases, clarity increases, and movement becomes natural. Because faith is not about hoping for the future, it is about living from it now. Chapter 7. Word, the spell of inner speech. Every mind is under a spell, not a mystical one, a linguistic one. The words you speak internally are not commentary. They are commands. Long before speech leaves your mouth, it forms reality inside you through inner dialogue. And that dialogue is constant, quiet, repetitive, and profoundly influential. This chapter is not about positive talk. It is about authoritative inner speech. Because words don't just describe experience, they shape it. Inner speech is instruction, not opinion. Most people believe their self-talk is harmless. It's just how I think. It doesn't mean anything. I don't really believe that. But the nervous system doesn't evaluate intention. It responds to instruction. Inner speech tells the body what to expect, what matters, what is dangerous, what is possible. And the body listens immediately. This is why casual internal phrases shape destiny more than deliberate affirmations. The difference between outer speech and inner speech. Outer speech is filtered. Inner speech is raw. You may encourage others while undermining yourself. You may sound confident externally, while rehearsing doubt internally. And the mind always obeys the inner voice. That voice is not who you are. It is who you have been agreeing with. Words as identity builders. Every repeated phrase installs identity. I always mess things up. I'm not good at that. That's just how it goes. I can't catch a break. These statements are not emotional releases. They are identity cement. The mind seeks consistency with its self-description. Change the description, and behavior follows. Why inner speech is so powerful. Words organize imagination. They tell the image what it means. The same image can feel hopeful or threatening depending on the words attached to it. This is exciting, creates expansion. This is risky, creates contraction. Words assign direction to feeling. That's why inner speech must be mastered after faith, because once you stop supervising outcomes, the inner narrator becomes louder. If it's untrained, it will default to old scripts. Everyday examples. The performance moment. A person steps into a challenge while saying internally, "Don't mess this up." The body tightens. Change the phrase to, "I handle this." Same situation, different outcome. The delay. Something takes longer than expected. One person says, "Here we go again." Another says, "This is unfolding." Same delay, different nervous system response. The setback. One mistake happens. Inner speech decides whether it becomes a lesson or a verdict. Misuse versus mastery of word. Misuse. Sarcastic self-talk, catastrophic language, identity labeling, speaking conclusions prematurely. This turns words into weapons. Mastery, speaking in outcomes, using neutral authority, naming states intentionally, ending internal arguments. Mastery uses words as alignment tools. The authority tone. Inner speech works best when it is calm, declarative, non-emotional. Not motivational hype, not pleading. Authority sounds like, "This is handled. I move forward. I stay consistent. I allow this." The mind trusts certainty, not volume. Practical integration, reprogramming inner speech. Step 1. Catch the casual phrases. Listen for automatic remarks, familiar conclusions, repetitive commentary. These are the real spells. Step 2. Replace conclusions, not thoughts. Don't fight every thought. Replace the ending. This always goes wrong. This adjusts. I'm bad at this. I improve. Step 3. Speak from identity. Use language that assumes capability, not future tense. Present orientation. Step 4. Repeat without emotion. Emotion is not required. Consistency is. Quiet reference points. This principle echoes teachings about the creative word, instructions to speak life, warnings about idle speech, metaphors of seed-bearing language. All point to the same truth. Words are causal. Reflective closing. You are always speaking something into existence internally. The only question is whether your words are accidental or deliberate. Mastery begins when inner speech becomes intentional command instead of unconscious commentary. Because the most powerful words you will ever speak are the ones only you can hear. Chapter 8. Memory. The past as a living script. Memory is not storage. It is selection. Most people believe memory records the past. In reality, memory reinterprets it constantly, subtly, and in service of identity. The past is not fixed. It is active. And unless memory is mastered, it will quietly script the future while convincing you that you're being realistic. Memory is not what happened. It's what stayed. Two people can live through the same event and remember it differently. Why? Because memory is not an archive. It is an editor. It keeps what confirms the current self-image and discards what doesn't. Over time, those selections harden into a narrative that feels unquestionable. That narrative becomes who I am, what's possible, what usually happens. Memory does not ask permission. It assumes continuity. Why memory comes after word. Order matters. By the time we reach memory, inner speech has already been shaping interpretation. Now, memory steps in and locks interpretation into time. Memory listens to language. Whatever you consistently say about your past becomes how your past functions in your present. This is why people relive experiences long after they've ended. Not because the event is powerful, but because the interpretation is unfinished. Memory as emotional time travel. Memory doesn't recall events. It recalls states. When you remember something painful, your body reacts as if it's happening now. Same chemistry, same tension, same meaning. This is why unresolved memory feels alive. The body cannot tell time. It responds to activated meaning. Mastery does not erase memory. It updates it. The trap of identity memory. Identity memory says, "This is how I've always been. I know myself. I tried that before." These statements feel wise. They are often protective assumptions disguised as experience. Memory protects the familiar, even when the familiar is limiting. And without awareness, memory becomes the loudest voice in the room. Everyday examples. The old failure. A person avoids opportunity because of a past failure. The failure isn't stopping them. The meaning they keep replaying is the childhood label. Someone was once called difficult, shy, or irresponsible. Years later, that label still informs behavior. The memory is not the label. It's the agreement with it, the emotional trigger. A tone of voice, a look, a situation triggers a disproportionate response. Why? Memory is not recalling information, it's activating identity. Misuse versus mastery of memory. Misuse. Treating memory as fact. Letting emotional recall define truth. Using the past as evidence against change. Rehearsing old meanings. This traps the mind in repetition. Mastery. Recontextualizing memory. Separating event from interpretation. Updating meaning consciously. Letting memory inform, not govern. Mastery frees time. Memory and assumption. The reinforcement loop. Memory feeds assumption. Assumption filters memory. This creates a loop where you remember what you expect what you remember. Break the loop, and identity loosens. That break begins with reinterpretation. Inner dialogue. Narrating the past. Memory speaks through inner narration. Listen for phrases like, "Ever since then," "That's when I learned," "Because of that, I." These are not neutral statements. They are active constructions of meaning. Change the narration, and the memory loses authority. Practical integration. Revising memory. Step 1. Identify a dominant memory. Choose one memory that still influences you. Not the most traumatic, just the most recurrent. Step 2. Separate event from meaning. Ask, what actually happened? What did I conclude about myself? These are rarely the same. Step 3. Install a new interpretation. Choose a meaning that empowers rather than confines. Examples. That was inexperience, not inability. That was timing, not destiny. That taught me adaptability. Step 4. Revisit calmly. Recall the memory with the new meaning. Repeat until the emotional charge fades. This is not denial. It is integration. Quiet reference points. This principle echoes teachings about forgetting what lies behind stories of transformation through remembrance. Instructions to renew understanding. Symbolic rebirth through reinterpretation. The past was never meant to imprison the present. Reflective closing. You do not live in the past, but the past lives in you through memory. Mastery is not forgetting. It is deciding what the past means now. When memory is updated, identity loosens and the future opens. Because the past is not a sentence. It is a draft. Chapter 9. Reason, the tool, not the throne. Reason is a powerful servant and a terrible ruler. It analyzes, compares, calculates, and predicts. It organizes data, finds patterns, and draws conclusions. Without reason, the mind would be chaotic. With reason in command, the mind becomes confined. This chapter restores reason to its proper place. Because reason was never meant to lead the mind. It was meant to support it. What reason actually does. Reason works by comparing past to present, measuring probability, predicting based on precedent, minimizing uncertainty. These functions are useful, but reason has a limitation it cannot overcome. Reason can only work with what already exists. It cannot originate. It cannot imagine. It cannot create new paradigms. Reason rearranges the known. That's why every breakthrough in human history appeared unreasonable before it appeared inevitable. Why reason comes this late in the sequence. Notice where we are in the architecture. By the time reason enters, imagination has defined direction, attention has been placed, assumption has been accepted, feeling has been embodied, will has stabilized, faith has settled, word has commanded, memory has been revised. Only now is reason safe. Why? Because reason will otherwise argue against anything unfamiliar. Reason defends continuity. If placed on the throne too early, it vetoes growth, the illusion of being realistic. Many people believe they are being realistic when they are actually being historical. They reason from past outcomes, old data, previous failures, inherited assumptions. Reason asks, has this worked before? What are the odds? What usually happens? Those are valid questions, but terrible gatekeepers for change. Reason should evaluate execution, not possibility. Reason and fear, a subtle alliance. Fear recruits reason. Fear says, explain why this won't work. Justify staying the same. Prove that risk isn't worth it. Reason obliges. It produces elegant arguments for limitation. That's why intelligent people often stay stuck longer than anyone else. They can rationalize anything. Everyday examples, the missed opportunity. A person wants to act, but reason lists risks until momentum dissolves. They feel wise, but they remain unchanged. The endless planning loop. Someone keeps researching, preparing, learning. They call it responsibility. But reason has replaced movement. The late realizer. Another person acts first, then uses reason to refine. They progress faster with less certainty. Why? Reason followed creation instead of blocking it. Misuse versus mastery of reason. Misuse. Letting reason decide identity. Treating probability as destiny. Using logic to delay action. Confusing caution with wisdom. This places reason on the throne. Mastery. Using reason to plan execution. Evaluating process, not possibility. Letting experience update logic. Allowing reason to refine, not restrict. Mastery puts reason back in service. Inner dialogue. Rational narration. Reason speaks through sense-making language. It wouldn't make sense. That's unrealistic. Logically speaking, these phrases are not neutral. They are boundary markers. They tell the mind where it is allowed to go. When you hear them internally, pause, not to silence reason, but to ask, is this a tool or a gatekeeper? Practical integration. Training. Reason. Step 1. Separate possibility from process. Ask, is reason judging whether this is possible? Or, is reason helping me execute? If it's the first, reason is overstepping. Step 2. Move first, reason second. Act in alignment with your chosen direction. Then use reason to adjust. This reverses stagnation. Step 3. Limit reason's jurisdiction. Give reason clear tasks, scheduling, structuring, sequencing, evaluating feedback. Not identity, not destiny. Step 4. Update logic with experience. Let lived results, not old data, train reason. Reason must learn from the present, not the past. Quiet reference points. This principle echoes teachings about wisdom versus knowledge, warnings against leaning solely on understanding, parables where logic failed but trust prevailed, distinctions between knowing and believing. All point to the same truth. Reason serves best when it does not rule. Reflective closing. Reason is a brilliant instrument, but it was never meant to be king. When reason leads, life contracts. When reason follows, life expands. Use reason to refine your path, not to decide whether you're allowed to walk it. Because mastery is not irrational. It is rightly ordered. Chapter 10. Discernment. Separating signal from noise. Discernment is not judgment. It is clarity. Where reason analyzes and compares, discernment recognizes. It senses alignment without debate. It separates what matters from what merely exists. In an overstimulated world, discernment becomes one of the rarest powers and one of the most essential. Because mastery is not about taking in more. It is about knowing what to ignore. Discernment is perception with wisdom. Discernment is not thinking harder. It is seeing more clearly. It asks, is this relevant? Is this aligned? Is this mine to carry? Discernment operates quietly. It does not argue. It does not justify. It simply knows when something does not belong. Why discernment comes after reason. Reason gathers information. Discernment filters it. If discernment comes too early, it becomes bias. If it comes too late, overload occurs. Placed here after reason has been restored to service, discernment becomes refined perception instead of reaction. Discernment decides which thoughts to entertain, which emotions to engage, which influences to allow, which paths to decline. Without discernment, power becomes scattered. Discernment versus judgment. Judgment evaluates people. Discernment evaluates alignment. Judgment says, this is wrong. This is bad. Discernment says, this is not for me. This does not serve my direction. Judgment creates resistance. Discernment creates freedom. The noise problem. Modern life floods the mind with opinions, advice, fear narratives, urgency signals. Not all noise is negative. Some noise is seductive. Discernment allows you to remain centered while information passes through without attachment. You don't need to reject everything. You just don't need to carry everything. Everyday examples, the advice overload. A person asks many people for guidance and ends up confused. Why? They substituted consensus for discernment. The emotional contagion. Someone absorbs others' moods and problems. They confuse empathy with responsibility. Discernment separates compassion from burden. The aligned number. The person declines an opportunity, not out of fear, but clarity. That no preserves energy and direction. Misuse versus mastery of discernment. Misuse. Using discernment to isolate. Confusing fear with intuition. Rejecting discomfort as misalignment. Becoming rigid. This turns discernment into avoidance. Mastery. Filtering without judgment. Remaining open but selective. Allowing challenge without chaos. Preserving inner clarity. Mastery keeps the system clean. Inner dialogue, the language of discernment. Discernment speaks in simple truths. This doesn't align. This is unnecessary. This distracts. This strengthens. No drama, no explanation. The mind relaxes when clarity is present. Practical integration. Training discernment. Step 1. Notice energy shifts. Pay attention to what drains you, what sharpens you, what confuses you. Energy is feedback. Step 2. Ask one question. Before engaging, does this support who I am becoming? That's discernment in action. Step 3. Practice clean numbers. You don't need justification. Clarity is sufficient. Step 4. Reduce input. Discernment strengthens as noise decreases. Less input, more signal, quiet reference points. This principle echoes. Teachings about wisdom and understanding. Metaphors of separating wheat from chaff. Instructions to test spirits. Warnings against double-mindedness. All point to the same truth. Clarity preserves power. Reflective closing. Discernment is the guardian of mastery. It protects your attention. It preserves your energy. It keeps the system aligned. Not everything deserves access to your mind, and the moment you realize that, you regain authority. Chapter 11. Love, Coherence, Union, and Expansion. Love is not emotion, it is integration. Most people reduce love to feeling, affection, attachment, desire, warmth, but those are expressions of love, not its function. Love is the power that unifies what has been divided. Where fear fragments, love coheres. Where conflict scatters, love organizes. Where resistance contracts, love expands. In the architecture of the mind, love is not softness, it is stability through unity. Love as a psychological state. Love, in its operative sense, is the state in which internal opposition dissolves. It is the absence of inner war. When love is present, attention stabilizes, reason softens, discernment clarifies, will steadies, faith relaxes, the body settles. This is not sentimentality. It is coherence. A coherent system wastes no energy fighting itself. Why love comes this late. Love cannot be forced early. When introduced prematurely, it becomes appeasement, people-pleasing, self-neglect, spiritual bypassing. True love requires structure first. By the time we reach love in this work, imagination has direction, attention has discipline, assumption is chosen, feeling is embodied, will is stable, faith is settled, word is aligned, memory is revised, reason is in service, discernment is clear. Now love integrates. Love is what allows all these powers to operate without friction. Love versus attachment. This distinction is critical. Attachment says, I need this to be okay. I can't lose this. This defines me. Love says, I am whole. I can give without losing myself. I remain aligned regardless. Attachment contracts. Love expands. Attachment binds identity to outcome. Love frees identity to flow. Love as nervous system regulation. The body recognizes love as safety, not excitement, not stimulation. Safety. In love, the nervous system exits survival mode. This is why clarity increases when love is present. The mind stops scanning for threat. You don't think better because you try harder. You think better because the system is calm. Everyday examples. The calm boundary. A person says no without anger. That's love, not aggression. The honest conversation. Someone speaks truth without needing to win. That's love, not weakness. The self-return. A person forgives themselves and continues. That's love, not indulgence. Misuse versus mastery of love. Misuse. Confusing love with tolerance of harm. Avoiding boundaries. Sacrificing alignment to keep peace. Losing self in others. This turns love into erosion. Mastery. Loving without self-abandonment. Integrating emotion with clarity. Holding boundaries calmly. Remaining whole while connected. Mastery makes love strong. Inner dialogue. The language of integration. Love speaks internally as acceptance without collapse. I allow this without resistance. I stay present. I am not divided. I move from wholeness. The mind settles when division ends. Practical integration. Cultivating love. Step 1. Identify inner conflict. Notice where you argue with yourself. That's where love is needed. Step 2. Remove the verdict. Replace judgment with observation. Conflict dissolves when blame ends. Step 3. Choose coherence. Ask, what would alignment look like here? Then act from that answer. Step 4. Expand gradually. Love grows through practice, not force. Begin internally. Let it extend naturally. Quiet reference points. This principle echoes. Teachings about love as fulfillment, metaphors of unity and oneness, instructions to love without fear, stories where integration brought peace. The message is consistent. What unifies, heals. Reflective closing. Love is not the opposite of strength. It is strength without resistance. When love governs the mind, energy stops leaking, clarity deepens, and life becomes cooperative. Because mastery is not control. It is coherence. Chapter 12. Vision, the coordinating power. Vision is not imagination. Imagination creates images. Vision organizes them. Imagination says, "This is possible." Vision says, "This is where I'm going." Vision is the power that holds all the others in relationship to a single direction. Without vision, the mind may be powerful, but it will be scattered. With vision, every power knows its role. Vision is not about seeing the future. It is about living from a chosen orientation. Vision is executive function. In the mind's architecture, vision functions like an executive. It does not do the work of the other powers. It assigns priority. Vision decides what imagination builds toward, what attention feeds, what assumptions are reinforced, what feelings are allowed to stabilize, what will stays with, what faith rests in, what words are spoken, what memories are kept, what reason evaluates, what discernment filters, what love integrates. Vision does not micromanage, it governs. Why vision comes last. Vision cannot be forced early. When vision is attempted before the other powers are trained, it becomes fantasy, pressure, or aspiration without grounding. But once the mind is internally aligned, vision becomes natural. It is not something you chase. It emerges. Vision is clarity born of coherence. Vision versus goals. Goals are external markers. Vision is internal orientation. You can achieve goals and still feel lost. You cannot live in vision and feel directionless. Goals can change. Vision stabilizes. Vision answers a deeper question than, "What do I want?" It answers, "Who am I becoming? And how does life move when I live from that identity?" Vision is lived, not visualized. Vision is not a picture you stare at. It is a state you return to. It shows up as consistent decisions, aligned behavior, natural boundaries, quiet confidence, reduced inner conflict. When vision is active, you don't need constant motivation. You move because movement feels appropriate. Everyday examples. The aligned individual. Someone doesn't rush, doesn't compare, doesn't panic. Not because life is easy, but because vision steadies the system. The clean decision. A person knows when to act and when to wait. Vision eliminates confusion. The long arc life. Someone builds over time without burnout. Vision absorbs fluctuation, misuse versus mastery of vision. Misuse. Turning vision into pressure. Treating vision as rigid destiny. Comparing visions. Abandoning vision when challenged. This turns vision into strain. Mastery. Holding vision lightly but consistently. Allowing form to evolve. returning without force, letting vision guide, not demand. Mastery makes vision sustainable. Inner dialogue, the language of vision. Vision speaks in orientation, not urgency. This is my direction. I move from here. This aligns. This doesn't. No drama, no rush. The mind trusts clarity. Practical integration, living vision. Step 1. Define the orientation. Not what you want, who you are when aligned. Examples: calm and effective, grounded and creative, clear and generous, consistent and free. Step 2. Ask one daily question. What does this version of me do next? Vision answers simply. Step 3. Let vision coordinate. Don't force outcomes. Let vision decide what you feed, what you ignore, what you continue. Step 4. Revisit, don't obsess. Vision strengthens through return, not fixation. Quiet reference points. This principle echoes. Teachings about seeing the end, metaphors of light and guidance, instructions to walk by inner sight, stories of leaders who moved by vision. The message is clear. Where there is vision, direction stabilizes. Reflective closing. Vision is the power that ends inner argument. When vision is present, the mind stops negotiating with distraction, fear, and doubt. Everything knows where it belongs, and that is mastery. Not control, not perfection, but coordination. The 12 Powers of Mind has now come to a conclusion. Thank you for listening. Please like and share.